I was coming back from a job interview down in Harlan, tired and running on cheap coffee, when my phone GPS suggested a shortcut, said it'd shave 30 minutes off my drive. The road name didn't ring a bell, but I'd grown up in the next county over. Figured I knew these hollers better than any phone. It pointed me to a narrow, gravel turnoff with a sun-faded sign that read Pike Hollow Road. The arrow leaned like it was tired of pointing the way. I hesitated, but the thought of crawling behind coal trucks another hour pushed me in. The gravel snapped under my tires as the road dropped between two steep banks of trees. I checked my phone again, 1 bar, then none. The kind of quiet settled over me that makes your own breath sound like a stranger. The hills were close enough to feel. The first mile was just dirt and trees. The next mile, the road narrowed to a single lane carved into the slope. Branches scraped the sides of my car with little dry whispers. Somewhere off in the timber, a woodpecker hammered, then stopped. That was the last normal sound I remember. Fog rolled in like it had been waiting just around the bend thick, gray, swallowing the world 10 feet out. I slowed to a crawl, leaning forward over the wheel. My headlights caught a deer on the shoulder, but it didn't bolt. It just watched me pass. Its eyes didn't shine right. They weren't bright like animal eyes in the dark. They were soft, wet, almost human. A bend later, the trees opened up and the road led me onto an old wooden bridge. Planks warped, railings sagged, nails rusted black. A metal sign half buried in kudzu leaned. At the approach, Pike Hollow Bridge, do not stop. Not unsafe, not closed. Just don't stop. I pressed on. The boards creaked under me, the kind of groan that travels up your spine and makes your teeth ache. Right in the middle, the radio silent for miles popped to life. Static, sharp enough to raise goosebumps. Then, clear as a Sunday whisper, a voice said my name. It was soft. Familiar in the way a memory is familiar. I didn't want to know more. I floored it, and the car lurched forward. In my rearview mirror, for a split second, I saw shapes thin, gray, long-limbed standing where the bridge had been empty. My stomach went hollow. I should have been out in 15 minutes. Instead, the road stretched. Every curve looked like the last. Trees grew older, blacker. The fog thickened until it felt like wet cloth pressed against the glass. Then I saw the house. It sat back from the road, canted to one side, porch swing hanging by one chain. No light, no car, no smoke from a chimney. But the front door was cracked, and in that black wedge of space, someone moved. I never saw a face, but I knew I was being watched. My chest tightened. I pressed the gas. The next curve, my phone lit up on its own. No bars. Just the camera app open to the front-facing lens. My reflection stared back, but wrong. My mouth moved before I spoke. Through the static of the radio, my own voice whispered, "Give it back." The wheel jerked in my hands like I'd hit black ice, but the road was dry. For a second, I felt the car pulled toward the trees, toward the black undergrowth that seemed to breathe in and out. I forced the wheel straight and stomped the gas, praying for pavement. And just like that, the road spit me out at a green highway sign. EXIT, 14 Lee County line. It was like stepping through a door. Fog gone. Trees normal. My hands shaking so bad, I had to pull over at the first gas station I saw. The clerk looked me over and said, "You didn't take Pike Hollow, did you?" I didn't answer. Didn't have to. He shook his head. That bridge went down in '79. Took a logging truck with it. Folks say it don't stay down. I laughed, raw and shaky. Bought a coffee I didn't drink. And drove home with the windows down, like air could wash it off. A week later, I found a splinter of black wood wedged in my tire. Old and slick like it had been underwater for years. I threw it away. Now, some nights, I wake to static from the radio I don't remember turning on. Sometimes it's just hiss. Sometimes, soft and patient, it says my name. I haven't driven a back road since. But when the weather's heavy and the house creaks, I swear I hear wood groan under weight that isn't there. And a low voice, calm as anything, saying, "Don't stop." Before we continue, do me a quick favor. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to see it. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. All right, let's get back to it. I was 3 nights into a solo backpacking trip through Laurel Fork when my phone lost service and never got it back. I'd planned it that way, just me, the ridge, and the old logging trails, but I hadn't planned for the fog. It rolled in like wet cement, thick and cold, so heavy it swallowed the trees 10 feet away. Even the ridge I'd been following disappeared, and my GPS turned into a dumb blank screen. By the second hour, I couldn't tell uphill from downhill. I dug my hand crank radio out of my pack, a relic I'd brought because my grandfather always said, "Mountain will talk to you if you listen right." I spun the handle, the gears whining, and static bled through the speaker. Then a voice cut in. Mail, clipped, urgent, Mayday. This is Able 2. Coordinates, followed by a string of numbers that didn't match my topo map. The voice was sharp with fear, but not the way a hiker sounds. More military. Old training in the tone. I called back, half expecting it to be a prank. All I heard was hiss. Then, a minute later, the voice again. Softer. Fuel leak. Can't see the ridge. Freezing. I smelled gasoline. There was no reason I should smell fuel. My pack stove ran on a sealed canister, and I hadn't opened it. But the air stung with that sweet, sharp bite of gas, like a spill in a closed garage. I started walking faster, following the faint impression of the trail. And that's when I noticed the footprints. 2 sets, mine and another. Same tread pattern as my boots, but deeper. Like I weighed twice as much an hour ago. The fog moved in pulses, breathing almost. And every time it thinned, I saw the forest had changed, trees stripped, bark raw and pale like bone. I passed the same snapped pine twice, same crow feather stuck in the branch. My compass spun in my hand. By dusk, my watch said I'd gone 5 miles. But the trail markers still read the same number it had at noon. I set up camp in a shallow cove because I couldn't keep moving behind. The fog pooled low, creeping under the tarp. My radio ticked on its own, a slow metronome sound. Mara, my hiking buddy back home, always said to ignore weird signals, but I couldn't. I held the speaker to my ear and whispered, "Are you hurt?" Static. Then the voice again. North Star gone. Sky's wrong. Cold, please. I lay on my side, staring into the mist outside the tarp, and realized the stars really were wrong. A smear of light drifted where Polaris should have been. Around midnight, boots crunched in the leaves outside. Slow, measured, heavy. I held my breath. The steps paused just beyond my tarp. Leaves shifted. No sniff, no animal sound. Just wait. Then a whisper, almost gentle. "I see your fire." But I didn't have a fire. My stove was off. My headlamp was dark. I didn't move. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. The footsteps circled once, twice, then faded uphill. I packed at first light. My watch read 4:47, then 11:12, then 4:47 again. My GPS track log showed loops drawn over themselves like a tight knot. Half a mile from camp, I found boot prints again. Mine doubled. Then a drag mark in the dirt, like someone hauling something heavy downhill. I didn't follow it. I kept walking until I hit the same fire tower I'd passed yesterday. The same dented beer can at its base. By afternoon, honest rain cut the fog, and a gravel road appeared. A pickup truck passed without slowing. The man in a blaze orange cap staring straight ahead like he didn't see me. When I finally hit pavement, bars popped back on my phone. Called a ranger station. Told them I got turned around. Left out the rest. Weeks later, scrolling local history online, I found it. A training plane went down on Laurel, Fork Ridge in 1943. Crew of 2. Fuel leak, never recovered. I turned the volume up on my broken WWII that night and cranked it just to hear the static. Somewhere in it, under the hiss, a voice still whispers coordinates. And sometimes, when the fog rolls against my window, I swear I smell gasoline. I only drove up to my family's cabin on Laurel, forked to drain the pipes before the first real freeze. It wasn't meant to be an overnight trip, just in and out before dark. But the mountains had other plans. Snow started as I turned onto the one-lane forest road. Soft at first, then hard, smearing the world into a white blur. By the time I realized I'd never make it back to town, the road behind me had vanished under 6 inches of wet snow. The cabin hadn't changed since my grandfather died. One-room log box, iron stove in the corner, and the pull-out couch that still smelled like cedar and mothballs. I barricaded the front door with a chair, stacked wood by the stove, and told myself it would be a funny story tomorrow. By nightfall, the wind started talking. The rafters popped like knuckles. The old weather vane squealed on the roof. My 7-year-old daughter, Emma, curled up under the quilt my great-grandmother had stitched red stars, crooked in places. She fell asleep fast. Kids always trust the walls they know. It was around midnight when the knock came. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Not a branch, not the wind. I froze with a half cup of cocoa in my hand, listening to the hollow rhythm bleed through the door. My grandfather's voice came, back to me from some deep place. Don't answer after first snow. Mountain keeps what it lends. The knock came again. Then a voice, low and tired, polite as a neighbor asking for sugar. "Ma'am?" Truck skidded off the grade. "Can I get warm a minute?" Emma stirred. Whispered, "Mom?" And that was the only reason I got up. I couldn't let her hear a man beg in the cold and pretend he wasn't there. I slid the chain into place and cracked the door. A man stood on the porch, maybe late 40s, beard salted with gray, coat torn at the shoulder. Snow clung to his boots. But what stopped me was his face. I knew him. I had never met him. He had been dead since 1979. My great-grandfather. Virgil stared back at me. The same bullet scar across his left eyebrow. The same crooked tooth I'd traced in old sepia photos as a kid. His eyes slid past me like he was checking the room for familiar things. Then he said, soft as smoke, "You kept the quilt." Logic fought like a drowning man. Family resemblance, coincidence, trick of light. But my hand shook as I slid the chain free and opened the door wider. The cold came with him like another person. He stomped his boots and sat on the edge of the rug, hands out toward the stove. His fingers shook around the mug I handed him. Then his eyes lifted to the attic pull cord. "Whatever you do," he said, "don't open that door before daylight." I almost laughed, but he didn't. His voice picked up speed, like words were rope and he was holding on. "And don't look in that hall mirror at dawn. Glass remembers." My scalp prickled. I hadn't thought about that mirror in years. My mother used to keep it draped, said it caught moods. I'd uncovered it earlier to check my face for wingrue. Emma sat up and squinted at him, blunt as kids are. "Mama, he looks like the man in the picture." My stomach turned over. He smiled at her like he already knew her name. The wind shifted, and under it, I heard whispers. Not words, just the soft hum of people packed tight like a crowd under snow. The stove hissed. Sparks jumped. Virgil or whatever he was leaned close. Storm lock the road till sun's high. I'll sit quiet. Just keep that attic shut. I nodded, because saying no felt like pulling a pin. I wrapped the attic cord around a nail, and that's when I saw them faint scratches in the paint around the hatch. Short, frantic marks that weren't there last summer. He tuned the old transistor radio we kept for novelty. It hadn't picked up a station in years, but the speaker popped to life with the tune. My great-grandmother used to hum Snapping Beans. Rationality frayed like old rope. I lay on the rug, pretending to sleep, but my eyes never closed. His shadow moved against the stove glow, while Emma breathed soft and steady. Around 4, the radio died to static, and he muttered a single word, "Borrowed." The word chilled my teeth. My great-grandmother used to say, "Mountain borrows people for a spell. Don't always return him." At 5:12, the wind stopped. Silence filled the room so deep, I heard the footsteps above the ceiling. Slow, heel to toe. The attic we'd nailed shut. I turned my head toward Virgil. He was already staring at me, eyes glassy. Then he whispered, "Don't answer him." Them, plural. The hall mirror caught my eye in the edge of my vision. The stove light stretched too long in its reflection, the room tall and wrong. And in that strip where the attic should have blocked view, a dim figure hunched, pressing hands to glass. I jerked my head away, heart hammering. He rose, gentle, and touched the quilt like it burned him. "She made this for a child that never lived," he said, and the air went ice cold. I grabbed a bedsheet and threw it over the mirror. The footsteps in the attic stopped. He exhaled, shaky. "Now you gotta name her," he said. I whispered every name I could remember, family, neighbors, old cousins, until I hit one that made the floor thump once, hard. He nodded. "That's the one y'all buried in gossip and not in ground. Balance comes due." Dawn bled gray through the curtains. He stepped to the door, hand on the knob like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Thank you for the heat. Don't go up there till noon. Nail it proper. Write her name on the beam." He stepped into the snow. No tracks for the first 3 seconds. Then Prince appeared slow, like the mountain decided whether to keep him. I watched until the bend took him. By noon, I climbed the ladder, wrote the name in black marker, and drove nails until my arm shook. Back home, I draped every mirror in the house. And on the first snow of every winter, I hear pacing overhead, even though I live on the top floor of an apartment. I press my hand to the ceiling. The boards beat back in time, and I tell myself I'm just paying on a debt the mountain hasn't called in yet. I was hired to keep the drilling outfit environmentally compliant, which mostly meant signing forms and pretending the red clay hills above. Red Clay Creek were just dirt, and not the kind of soil old men in. Clay County told you to leave the hell alone. The timber company had cleared a patch the size of a football field. Nothing but stumps and gullies. My job was to log sample readings and make sure the runoff wouldn't poison the creek. On day 2, Walter from the logging crew leaned on his four-wheeler and spat chaw into the dirt. "That ground's grave soil for the unremembered," he said. "Y'all poke it. It'll sing through your bones." I smiled like consultants are paid to smile. Data didn't leave room for superstition. By noon, we'd sunk the first test bore. The rig whined into a pitch you felt in your molars more than your ears. And my teeth started chattering like I was cold, even though it was August heat. Cicadas screaming, sweat rolling down my spine. The vibration ran through the steel deck into my femurs until my legs buzzed. When the core barrel came up, the clay was dark too dark like dried blood. It smelled metallic, sharp, like pennies held too long in your mouth. I touched the sample tube and felt it hum. Not a mechanical vibration, something deeper. Like a low note from a pipe organ running straight into bone. The geophone printouts started showing a steady waveform with no source. No trucks nearby. No planes overhead. Then Gus, our driller with 30 years in the field, pinched his nose and cursed. Blood dripped between his fingers. "Feels like somebody humming under my skull," he said. Rena, the chemtech, flinched and grabbed her jaw. "My fillings hurt. It's like music, but wrong." I almost laughed until my own jaw clicked in rhythm with the drill. Thud, thud, syncopated like a heartbeat under the ground. By mid-afternoon, the woods had gone silent. No birds, no katydids. Even the breeze had died. The hollow pressed in, heavy with its own listening. That's when Eli, the youngest on the crew, yelped and held up his forearm. A crack had spidered along his skin, right over a vein. Shallow but bleeding. Clay dust caked in it like grout. And then Gus's radio spat a noise I'll never forget. Our own voices, layered back 5 seconds late, twisted into a minor key, singing a wordless harmony. Walter's warning chewed at the edge of my thoughts. Grave soil for the unremembered. The company man barked at us to keep drilling. "Deadlines don't care about ghost stories," he said. At sunset, the clay at the edge of the pit glistened wet, though we hadn't hit water. When I touched it with a gloved finger, the fibers stuck and pulled like taffy. When I peeled it back, I heard a low moan in the dirt, soft but rising in pitch. The drill head seized without warning. Gus killed the engine, cursing, and the sudden silence felt like stepping into a vacuum. Then the ground sang, no words, just a single vibrating tone, deep and human, shaking the air in my chest. The sample tubes on the rack rattled like tuning forks. My own voice hummed against my will, my chest resonating with it until I clamped my mouth shut. Rena threw her headset off and backed away, hands over her ears. The clay at the pit's edge shifted, just a hair, enough to see it slide back into itself, like something breathing under a thin sheet. And then the footprints appeared. Not ours, bigger, bare, pressed deep in the wet clay, one after another, circling the rig. Each step sank, then rose, leaving nothing but smooth earth behind. Gus bolted first, sprinting for the truck. Eli followed, clutching his arm. I stayed because my legs wouldn't move, because the air was thick with a sound that was almost a voice, and almost my own. The ground swelled. A mound of red clay pushed upward like a slow exhale, and in that moment, I felt a weight behind my eyes, a pressure that whispered one clear thought: leave it covered, or we take weight for weight. I stumbled back, grabbed the log sheets, and ran. The trucks fishtailed out of the hollow, spitting mud, leaving the rig and all the samples behind. The company wrote it up as equipment failure and trespassers. Sent another crew a month later. They never reported back. Now, every time I drive past those hills, I hear a faint hum in my jaw. My molars ache. And on humid nights, the wind carries a sound like a choir far underground, singing one long, steady note. Sometimes, if I listen too hard, I hear my own voice in it.